Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 20 of My Hero Academia. Finally, My Villain Academia. The manga reader in me is really excited for this episode, but the manga reader for me is also really trepidatious and nervous about this episode too. So I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously, but there's been a lot of hype and buildup, and I know that a lot of people on Twitter have been like, okay, manga readers, this better be worth it. It's like, I hate that feeling, because I feel like if you've read the manga, you go into a series with certain expectations, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why this is one of the few shows that I'm watching that I know what's going to happen somewhat. Everything else I like going in blind, because then I'm pleasantly surprised. And if it doesn't quite meet the manga standards, I don't know that. So if it's a great episode, it's a great episode. So I try to keep an open mind and not be super crazy critical if it doesn't meet expectations. But Twitter has been a buzz being like, okay, manga readers, this better live up to expectations. And it's like, I hate that vibe, because I'm like, well, it's not our fault if it doesn't live up to expectations, right? We're just excited because of the storylines that are to come and seeing it all animated. So I feel like that makes me nervous going into this episode, but I'm glad we're finally here. So we wrapped up last episode with a storyline involving Shirakumo being introduced and Aizawa and President Mike, and the understanding that you can have hyper-intelligent Nomu, that Kurogiri was based off of Shirakumo and his quirk and incorporated other quirks, and the idea of having a hyper-intelligent, very competent Nomu is quite terrifying, because that establishes that, yeah, the Nomu that faced Endeavor could talk, but he was still relying on a lot of like raw primal instinct, whereas Kurogiri can clearly strategize and follow commands and do things rationally. So the fact that All for One can create something like that is pretty terrifying. So yeah, with that being said, we're in the end game now. We're at the last part of season 5. We've got this episode 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We have the last 6 episodes of the season. So I'm curious what all we're going to get accomplished this season. But again, I'm keeping a very open mind. And then as always, we'll have a non-spoiler discussion after the reaction. And if you want to stick around, we'll talk spoilers then. But that being said, let's dive in, shall we? We are going to start episode 20 of My Villain Academia and start that here in 3, 2, 1, let's go. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have so much I want to say, and a lot of it is spoilery, so I don't want to say it yet. So I found myself very conflicted during the reaction, because on the one hand, seeing this stuff animated, and I don't go back and read the manga until after the episode, so it's been a hot minute since I've read this part of the manga. And so there were parts of it that I had forgotten about that I was like, oh yeah, this is happening. And there was parts about it that I was like thinking, oh man, I want to talk about that. But what I wanted to say in the moment during the reaction was spoilery. So I was like, I can't say that. And so if I was a little bit quieter during this reaction, that's because I was like, I can't say what I want to say. But we'll talk about it in the spoiler discussion. But I'm so glad we're on this part of the storyline and getting focused. Like, most of this season has been looking at the heroes, looking at Class 1A, Class 1B, looking at Endeavor's agency, looking at the hero side of things. And so I love what Horikoshi does with this part of the manga, is that we delve into the villain side of it and the villain perspective. And there's so much that is intriguing about this. So I wanted to go through the episode without any, spoiler context. But again, Kurogiri, the very, very intelligent Nomu, telling Shigaraki that yes, there is a way, there is a power that you can obtain that All for One has left for you, and it is in the form of Gigantomachia. So I find it hilarious during the reaction. I was like, man, when he was crying like that, I was like, that's such Toto from Jujutsu Kaisen vibes. The same energy, but Gigantomachia being extremely loyal to All for One to a fault, to the point where he won't accept anybody as All for One's successor unless they can prove it. So we're backtracking 2 months from the present timeline, and then we go forward a month and a half. So we're still a couple weeks behind, which would be about the time the Christmas episode happened earlier on in the season, when all of the instructors at UA were meeting to talk about the incident in the city, which is what we're about to find out how it went down. We're about to see what happened. But it's so nice to see the League of Villains again. It's so nice to see them. Toga and Twice and Compress, our Trash King Dobby. It's just, it's wonderful. I had forgotten how much I like seeing this group together. And I will say, I had never really noticed watching My Hero Academia. I found out late in the game that the voice actor for Shigaraki is the same voice actor as Tsukishima from Haikyuu. And I kind of can tell in this episode, I was like, man, it sounds like Tsukishima. Because this is probably one of the most talkative episodes we've seen of Shigaraki, right? Usually Shigaraki's been pretty reserved and kind of one-linery in his dialogue, but here he has a lot to say, and it's so easy to forget that Shigaraki's a kid. Like he's a little bit older than Deku and them, but he's still a kid, right? He's still very young. And so he has that kind of childish mindset where he's viewing the entire thing with the doctor and the entire thing with Gigantomachia. He talks about tutorials and about levels and about HP. He's viewing this all as a game, right? Which is kind of terrifying because Gigantomachia can kill people. He can hurt people and destroy entire cities. And Shigaraki's just treating it like it's a video game. That's kind of how dangerous Shigaraki is in a sense, because he is very kid-minded and kind of sheltered in terms of that. And even the doctor brings it out too. Like, you're like a kid in a candy shop with all of this. But I have missed Twice so much. I absolutely love him. The idea that his ringtone is a fart sound, amazing. Amazing. But I like in this that we get to that the animation on Dobby was really, really well done, like super well done. And I went back and read the manga, and we actually get more animation than the manga on Dobby's face. But his reaction of trying to burn Gigantomachia, and the flames don't work. They do nothing. They're just like, ugh. And he just goes right past it. I love Dobby's expression. Like, the animation on his face is wonderful in this. And then we get Toga, and I like that as soon as he hears the master's voice, he instantly like calms down and cools down. It's like a trigger. It's great. But yeah, going into the doctor's lab, the high-end Nomus and the tanks, and I love the purples. Like, seeing it all in color is so cool. These Nomu look terrifying. All of them like missing their heads and their brains being messed with. Like, it's some body horror, freakish John Carpenter stuff, and it's really, really cool. And I just love the purple glow and everything of the doctor. Very, very, very atmospheric. And so we get this whole thing about Shigaraki and him asking about, how he's doing with the family, which is the hands and stuff all over him. And the doctor saying that he's dedicated his entire life to All For One. So he's an All For One fanboy. He's dedicated everything. He's drank the Kool-Aid, gone all in. And asking why should he rely on Shigaraki. He's like, I can give you power, but you're weak now. Why should I do that? You have to prove yourselves to get this. And I want to make sure you're worthy of my full devotion. So it's very much like Gigantomachia. The doctor is a different kind of devotion. Gigantomachia and the doctor both completely are obsessed and loyal to All For One. And he wants to make sure that Shigaraki is worth it as well. And he also calls him by his actual name, by Tenko Shimura. Or we see that in the flashback. So it's like, I forget sometimes that Shigaraki is not his actual name. It's Tenko Shimura because he's Nana's grandson. And then the whole idea of when I put everyone on, my anger builds up. And the idea that he doesn't remember, the oldest memory he has that he can recall is All For One finding him. And what's so terrifying is just how sincere All For One seems, like how kind he is. It's like, Tenko Shimura, you were scared and in pain. And we never see his eyes. It frustrates me so much we don't see All For One's face. It's like, ugh! It's like, you must have run looking for a helping hand. Which, no pun intended, right? It's like, what an awful thing. And here's the thing, him embracing Shigaraki, like hugging him, like giving him that physical contact that he's been denied is so powerful. And in that moment, that won that kid entirely over. And the light shining on him and the shadows. I love the metaphor and the symbolism. Anytime there's like a light and darkness symbolism, I get really excited about it. But the light shining on All For One and it casting a shadow over Shigaraki. It's like his influence just shades over him. And it's, saying how long you waited, saying a hero will, sooner or later a hero will. That's what they all thought as they pretended not to see you. Who the heck made it this kind of world anyway? Which is hilarious because he's part of the reason, right? And just his influence over Shigaraki being like, everyone turned a blind eye to you, but not me. Not me, your quirk's too interesting. You'll be fine now. I'm here for you. Oh, and here's the thing. When he says, I'm here, it's such a parallel to All Might. All Might saying, I am here. And All For One saying, I am here. And it's like, it's just, and the irony that All For One, the irony that Shigaraki, the irony is Shigaraki's actual grandmother is the one that All Might inherited the power from. But her actual flesh and blood ends up being with All For One. Oh my God, I love it. So, and he says, my real memories only began when I was in my master's arms. Up until then, I was empty. And he has the little gloves on, which is adorable. And he says the room's cramped in the flashback here, but I'm like, that room's the same size as like the dorms in UA. It's like a decent sized room. I don't know why he said that. I guess he's just trying to, be nice. But it's a pretty standard room. He says, I'm your master. And then the disturbing thing is them bringing the hands of his family. And I'm not spoiling anything, but all I can say is they showed some images in this scene that I'm like, oh, yep, okay. And him just throwing up. And then the metaphor of him grabbing the hands and like surrounding them with him, but that's also what makes him angry. So it's complicated. There's lots of complicated things going on. Even if your memories don't return, there are feelings lodged in your heart. What I want to teach you is where to direct those feelings, that irritation. So he's like, there's hatred in your heart, and I'm going to teach you on how to use that hatred and who to use it on. And then, and Shigaraki saying, even though it makes me feel sick, my mind feels calm in a way, which is such a disturbing contrast. Like, you're sick to your stomach, but you feel calm. It's strange. There's nothing inside me beyond fragmented images. Yet a lump of lead sinks within my mind. I want to note that in this one part, we get everyone's reactions. Spinner looks super serious about it. Dobby's kind of like passive, like, okay. Compress looks very disturbed by what he's hearing. Toga looks like she understands but doesn't quite like it. And then Poor Twice looks very empathetic and like contemplative. Anger comes gushing out and I can't get any relief. Yeah, even if the hero society were to collapse, even if I were to rule from the shadows, so even if I gain power, even if we gain all this success, the feeling that I have is never going to go away. I have to hate things. All that breathe irritate me. So let's wreck it all. And you'll see the most beautiful horizon. And Toga brings up a really good point. She's like, well, wait a minute. If we destroy everything, what about the stuff I like? And he's like, well, you're my comrades. So you guys just do whatever you want. And she's like, okay, cool, yay. Like, Toga. So they agree that if they get Gigantomachia to submit to him, that he will give Shigaraki the power that he wants. And then we got that creepy Nomu Johnny, that little tiny one that has like that allows them to transmit. I guess the quirk is called transmission because it transports them back through like the vomit, which is disgusting. So yeah, Gigantomachia, the idea that this giant Hulk-like monster will fight nonstop for 2 days, will sleep for 3 hours, and then go right back to fighting for 2 days is insane. And this is clearly, they established they've been doing this for a month and a half. So they've not been getting a lot of sleep. So all of them are sleep deprived. They're all taking turns sleeping so that Shigaraki can get some rest and they can try to fight Gigantomachia for various periods of time. But I like the idea that Shigaraki says wherever I go, he can find me. So I'm clearly All For One has done something with this. But your future king has returned. Oh my gosh. And then I like that Toga is like, our future king! It just reminds me of the Lion King for some reason. And with the affiliation, we know nothing about Shigaraki. We don't know his birthday, his height, his blood type, what he likes. We know nothing, which is kind of sad. But yeah, so then we get to, I want to note out of Toga and Spinner, of Toga getting the new coat and her being so happy and that she can be stylish, because I forget sometimes that these characters are young, and in Toga's case, she's a teenage girl, like she's a high school age girl. So of course, her having a nice coat and being comfortable, that's important to her. So amidst all this chaos and insanity, she's just happy to have comfy clothes. And then Spinner without his headband is so neat to see. But Toga said something really interesting here, where they bring up this conversation between Spinner and Toga, saying you came here because you liked Stain, right? So there's hardly anything left of Stain in the league, so why are you still here? And her response is so interesting. She's like, well, I love Mr. Staney, but I also love Izuku and I love Ochako. So I want to keep being able to become so many that I love. So she's like, I want to keep fighting because eventually we're going to run into Ochako and Deku again, and I want to be able to get their blood and become them again. So, and Spinner's like, I don't know who I'm working with, but whatever. Just glad you're free-spirited. So, yeah. And then Jiren. We get the reveal that Jiren is still being held by the Meta Liberation Army. And old Redestro has been chopping off his fingers and leaving him about town, trying to leave calling cards. I like that Redestro had gone to the trouble of leaving all these fingers as calling cards, and the league didn't even notice. They were too busy fighting Gigantomachia to even care. They were like, wait, what's been going on? And they're like, haven't you watched the news? And they're like, no, we've been busy. So, Redestro, supreme leader of the Meta Liberation Army. And we'll talk about more in the spoiler corner, but I love Redestro. His voice actor is so perfect. I absolutely love it. It's great. So basically the idea is that they're like, look, we're a big, powerful organization, and y'all are a threat to us. Even though there's so few of you, you could cause a lot of damage. So you need to just come down here to the city, and we need to talk about all this. And if you don't, we're holding Jiren hostage, your broker. And Twice, of course, has such a bleeding heart. He's like, no, we have to go save him. If there's a chance to save him, we have to take it. And Compress is like, look, we need a plan. We can't just go rushing in there. And so I like that each of the league members has a different viewpoint of everything. And meanwhile, Dabi's been, trying to gather Hawks up as a member. He's like, I don't got time to face Gigantomachia. I'm going to go do my own thing. And Toga's like, well, it's just because your power doesn't work on him. But oh man, I'm really, really excited. We get all of our players introduced, the Hearts and Mind part of the Liberation Army. We get the publisher. We obviously have Redestro. It's great. I love it. And then we have the guy with the bangs is doing like intelligence. And then basically Redestro challenging Shigaraki, being like, look, Overhaul's not in the picture anymore. It's you and me. We're the two main bad guys. Only one of us needs to be in charge. Who's it going to be? And, oh my God. I love the idea that Shigaraki's like, fine, you know what? We can make this work. We'll just lure Gigantomachia to the city when he wakes up, and all the Meta Liberation Army members, they can fight him. And we'll just sneak out and do our thing, get Jiren and go, while Gigantomachia is taking care of everything. But that doesn't leave them a lot of time, so they really have to kind of stall until Gigantomachia wakes up. And then Twice, of course, like, even if there's a small chance he's alive, we need to go and rescue him. And Compress, why have you become so hung up over friends? And I love that because Twice, he's like, I'm an outcast. I understand. And Twice just wants people to have friends like he wants friends. It's why I love Twice so much. Even though he's a villain, he has such a relatable, interesting, unique perspective on things. Compared to the others. And I love that Toga just crouches down beside him while he's freaking out, like she's there just to offer support if he needs it. But yeah, I love Shigaraki, that body language where he's like, we're going to crush him. Take Gigantomachia and crush him down. I love that body language. It's great. So yeah, this was a really, really good episode and a good start to My Villain Academia, but I have lots of spoilers to talk about. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this episode and this reaction. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. If you're anime only, what you guys think of it so far. If you're not anime only, you can stick around for spoilers and we'll go from there. But yeah, guys, I'm so excited. So very excited. So with that in mind, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with more My Hero, or rather, My Villain Academia. So there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about. And honestly, I actually feel a lot better watching this episode now. I feel a lot better because at the start of this reaction, I was a little bit nervous because there were parts that I was like, oh, are they going to skip over that? And rereading the manga, I was like, oh, wait, okay, no, they're not skipping over it. We just haven't got to that part yet. So this arc is kind of weird because Horikoshi sets things up from the very beginning of it and then comes back to it later. So he kind of revisits it. So it makes sense why the animation studio has chose to end the season on this particular arc and why they've restructured the entire events of the manga to let this kind of happen there at the end. But this is going through chapters 220 to 224, and we only get through part of chapter 224. So it's 220, 121, 22, 23. So it's about 4.5 chapters, which is quite a lot, but there's only a few parts that were left out. I have to comment though, I love that they changed the opening to My Villain Academia. I love it. I kind of wish they'd included this. It's where Shigaraki walks by, the panel touches the screen and it decays and cracks. I wish they'd done that in the episode. That would have been really cool, but it would have kind of broke the fourth wall and been really meta. So I get why they didn't do it. There's not a whole lot left out of these episodes, but there are a couple of things. So around here, you're going to see some panels. This entire arc starts out with this little side story of them kind of breaking up the creature rejection clan known as CRC. They're basically breaking up an old antiquated group of people that are against quirk users. And so, or creature rejection squad, clan. It's basically just a weird group and a cult that they kind of disband and take over their mansion. So that's kind of cool that we get to see them take over this mansion. I wish we'd had that in the beginning of the episode, but the clan getting kicked out doesn't bear anything on the plot. But what I do wish we'd had from this section is this whole entire first part of the chapter is from Spinner's point of view. I love the action shots. I love Compress. Like, they each get to show off their powers, like Twice just like slicing someone's neck, Toga going in and stealing the blood after he slices them so that she can drink it and become them, Compress using his powers to like get a guy's fingers to come off, and Spinner just attacking him. Like, we get it from Spinner's perspective, which is really cool. And it shows them all like an aftermath of fighting them. And Toga's like, oh, my equipment broke. My equipment is kind of faulty. And then Compress is like, my prosthetic is in dire need of repair as well. We'll have to request a new one from Jiren. So it's tying back to them needing Jiren. And then they say, where are we going to get the cash for that? So at the beginning of this arc, there is an establishment that the League of Villains is broke. They don't have any money. And they're all kind of in disarray and disrepair. I like in this panel, you can see in the corner, Toga and Twice going through all the loot. I like that Horikoshi subtly, and without having to say it, establishes what good friends Twice and Toga are. Like, they are really close friends. And seeing them in panels together is really cool because you get that little recognition as the series goes on. But Spinner is just kind of annoyed because they're broke and they need a place to live. And they're just kind of going from place to place, house to house, and just like living off scraps. And we get Dobby, of course, saying that he's trying to recruit members, aka Hawks, and he's, you know, the only one out there doing something, and everybody kind of gets mad about that. But what I like about this section is that it ties back to Kurogiri talking to Shigaraki, and then it ties back to the doctor himself, saying the doctor was All For One's personal doctor. He's really cautious, but we need his help if we're going to help unlock what All For One wanted them to do after his defeat. And there's this panel here where Spinner gets really mad, and he's like, look, I'm only here because Stain inspired me. It's like such a callback to season 2. It's like Spinner and Toga, and they kind of touch upon it in the episode, but Spinner saying, you know, I'm only here because I was following Stain's influence, But Stain's not even in the league anymore. He's not even a part of it at all. So why am I here? What are we doing? What's the game plan? Why aren't you motivating us? Like telling Shigaraki, like, you need to be inspiring as a villain. And Shigaraki's like I said, I've got a plan. Just hear me out. And I like that as Spinner is getting so frustrated, you see Twice like scratching his nose like, this is awkward. Compress, he's a blank slate. Dabi's like, where are we going? And Toga's just yawning like she doesn't care. But so while we didn't really get anything with that, I wish we had. I wish we'd gotten something with that scene to kind of preface, but I get how it's not important to the overall story, but it would be nice to know. I will say, if you're not reading the manga, go read it. As much as I'm liking season 5, and I am liking it a lot, the manga's better. You should be reading the manga. It's so good. And the artwork is so good. But going into the Nomu, into the Doctor's lair, the only thing that they didn't include in that part, and it kind of makes sense, is that when they first arrive, Compress notes, he's like, oh, you're the Doctor, right? And he's like looking through the shadows, and the Doctor like skirts himself back as far as he can because he doesn't want to be seen. The Doctor doesn't want to be recognized because, as we find out later, he's the doctor that's been diagnosing and treating all the kids with quirks. He's the doctor that Deku had that said he was quirkless. So he's a well-known figure in the community, so he doesn't want people to see him. And then I have to show you all this cover for chapter 222 of Deku as the kaiju, as the moth. It's great. And Bakugo like crushing his drink. And Ida crying and Todoroki sleeping and Ochako looking very excited. Yeah. It's going to come up later, but I wanted to show you that cover there just for now because I thought it was interesting. So, God. I was really nervous at first because I thought for a second that they were going to skip over Shigaraki's backstory. I thought for a second we were skipping over it, and I was like, why are we skipping over? Because we see the image of the corgi, we see the image of the family, and for a second I was like, oh my god, are we going to skip over everything? But luckily, the manga, like I said, Horikoshi sets everything up with little glimpses, little previews, and the manga only shows us what we saw in the anime. So that made me feel better. I was like, oh, okay. But here's the thing with this panel here. Back when Spinner was yelling at Shigaraki about being a Stain follower and not having a sense of purpose, Spinner made the comment that he felt hollow and empty and he didn't know what his purpose was. And so he was looking for Shigaraki to make some kind of impression on him and motivate him somehow to go forward. And so we get this flashback and Shigaraki's talking about it. Again, I am here, all for one's I am here as he holds Shigaraki. It's such a powerful panel. Oh my God. But Shigaraki saying, all I can really remember is my master holding me. Before then, I'd been an empty shell, completely hollow. And that's exactly how Spinner felt. And so Shigaraki's talking about All for One giving him a sense of purpose and belonging. And that's exactly what Spinner went through as well. So I find that parallel there really, really interesting. And oh my gosh, I can't wait till we get into the backstory. I cannot. But everything pretty much follows beat for beat in the anime. There was this one panel when Shigaraki's talking about Hero Society crashing down. Even if I rise to rule the underworld, the weight in my heart is never going to go away. So these feelings, this anger and rage that I have, no matter what I do, it's like that itch is still there. It won't leave. And so he's like, I hate everything. Every living, breathing thing rubs me the wrong way. So why not destroy it all? Why not destroy everything? And we don't get to see it, but I wanted to show you all this panel because there's so much going on. There's people laughing. There is, oh my God, there's Stain there. Stain in between Bakugo and Deku. There's the one guy from the second movie. This came out right around the time of the second My Hero Academia movie. This chapter did. So we got the preview of 9, the villain from the second film. We see Gran Torino. We see Mount Lady and Kamui Woods. And here's the thing. We see Aizawa and All Might. We see Class 1A and Class 1A there. But there's a couple panels here that I want to call out to y'all. One is Gran Torino right by Shigaraki. My hype theory, my theory beyond everything is that Nana Shimura is obviously Shigaraki's grandmother, but I think Gran Torino's his grandfather. I do. And later when we read the manga and we get to that point of the war arc and Shigaraki is facing Gran Torino, it just cements it for me. But I like the little foreshadowing here of Gran Torino being opposite sides of Shigaraki, because they're going to fight like 60 chapters from now. So it's cool that we're getting that little foreshadowing here. It's really, really cool. And then the other thing is, at the top of the screen, there is the baby with the head on its hand. And the baby looks like Fuyumi, right? Looks kind of like baby Fuyumi if you've read the manga. And then the person with the flowers, holding the flowers, is Endeavor. Is Endeavor holding the flowers that are the ones that he gives Ray. So yeah, interesting stuff, right? Interesting stuff. Heaven and hell, I'll show you both. So yeah, but no time for that, because Redestro is going to get in the way of everything. And I love Redestro. I was worried that we were going to skip his introduction and his backstory, but it looks like we're going to start the next episode with him. So I'm really, really excited for that to happen. But we get a little glimpse of all of the lead executives of Detnerat. And we get, obviously, oh God, I can't remember his name. It's Tomoyasu. Oh my God, not Scanner. Oh my gosh, I can't. My brain is mush. I'll remember his name for next episode. But we get him, and then we have the Hearts and Mind party leader Koku, and then we have Chitose, and then obviously Redestro. And then we have a little thing of Gekken there at the corner there, along with Jiren. So, oh my gosh, I'm really excited to see their battles go down, especially the ones with Twice. But Redestro, I love him so much. He's just drawn like, he looks kind of like Ganondorf off of Legend of Zelda. He's such a just cheesy vaudeville like villain, and I absolutely love him. And I didn't get this in the anime when we see all the fingers of Jiren and how he positioned them around town. It was forming, this is the Redestro, the Detnerat symbol of all the members. The Meta Liberation Army is like the loser sign on your head. It's the L for liberation, and it's there. And he used Jiren's fingers to form the L. It's so cool. It's so freaking cool. I love them setting up the battle between Shigaraki and Redestro. And at the very end, I wanted to bring up this panel because it's just so freaking cool. And I think the idea of Twice being like, I'm a stray, I'm an outcast, so of course I have empathy for people who are as well. And then Shigaraki's like, shut up, I have a plan. And then Toga being next to him. This episode here has reminded me of how much next season's gonna suck. Because spoilers, major spoilers, but Twice was one of my favorite characters in the show. He was my favorite character of all the League of Villains. I love Twice. And so all these times we've seen this season of him forming this bond with Hawks. And Twice is someone that sticks up for his friends to the bitter end. And knowing that he's gonna die, it's rough. I was like, Horikoshi, you just had to, didn't you? But we'll talk more about that when that happens, but I'm not looking forward to it. This episode, it's reminded me how much I love Twice. And so I'm like, no, why are you doing this? Why are you making us really love Twice, Horikoshi, when you're just going to put us through all that pain? Why? So, it's frustrating. But anyway, I'm really, really excited about this last set of episodes. This reaction's been kind of all over the place because I'm trying to gather my thoughts because there's so much that has yet to come. I don't want to get ahead of myself because this episode I kept thinking, okay, are they going to show us this or are they not going to show us that? So I want to have an open mind and kind of backtrack and take it back and kind of just have a deep breath and go into it and just let the chips fall and see what they include in these last 5 episodes. But there's the whole flashback with Shigaraki. I've waited for them to animate so long. And I know they're not going to be as gory as they can be with it. The manga is freaking disturbing, but it's so good. So I'll definitely probably have screenshots of it when we get to that point. But I can't wait. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm sorry if this reaction was totally scattered, but I have so many thoughts and I don't want to spoil or get too ahead of myself because we don't know what's going to happen in the next episode. But I'm really excited to see Redestro's backstory and to see all that leading up to the Sad Man's Parade, to Shigaraki's backstory, to Toga's upgrade, to Getten versus Dabi, all the stuff that's to look forward to. I'm pretty excited. I hope they saved their budget for this last couple episodes. Hopefully they did because I think they can do some really cool things with them. But in the meantime, I'm curious to know your thoughts. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction. I'm curious to know what you thought down below. But in the meantime, have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to y'all again real soon with more My Hero Academia. Bye.